Hi, I'm Constance Armstrong, and I am here doing the podcast. This is the first one, so I'm a little nervous, a little bit, which I think is good. And we're going to talk about my journey with microdose. And I hope it's helpful to people. I know it will be. I've already had some experiences sharing my story. And so, anyway, let's just get into it. I'm Constance Armstrong. I am a nurse and a human who has a story to tell about my own healing journey. And so in 2022, in March of 2022, I was experiencing some health issues. And I remember I started messaging. I was just telling my friends and family I wasn't feeling well. I had some pain in my knee and I wasn't feeling great. And so I kept on writing. I started keeping a list of all my symptoms. And I kind of felt like people thought maybe I was going crazy, which is a terrible feeling. And but I knew that I wasn't feeling well at all. And people would be like, "Oh yeah, I've got long COVID," which I'm not knocking. But or they'd have the flu or be tired. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I think that this is like something beyond that. And I remember just sleeping really long periods of time. Like I would drop my daughter off at school and then I would just sleep for 4 hours. I was just feeling like trash. I went to the doctors several times with a variety of different complaints. I ended up fainting while I was at a sporting event that my ex-boyfriend was participating in. It was just weird. I couldn't figure out what was going on. But I thought that there might be something going on with my knee. I knew there was something going on with my knee. I got a biopsy. While I was waiting for the biopsy results, I ended up having this crazy swelling in my head. And it started coming down the side of my face, which was really disturbing. But I had already had so many different symptoms that I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to deal with this right now. I just want to take a nap. And my friend had told me, you have to promise me to go into the ER. So I go into the ER and they're going to do an MRI on my head. And as I'm in the emergency room, the doctor let me know that they had gotten the biopsy results back and that it was melanoma. And I knew that I did the math. I'm a nurse. And so I knew that I had these two regions that were definitely affected. It was my knee and my head. And so there had to be something going on the rest of my body. So I got a bunch of scans the next day. It was really a horrible day. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely in shock and ended up looking at the prognosis. It was I had an 18% chance of being alive in 24 months. It was really, really, really grim. And so I had a couple good cries. My dad came out to take care of me. I had a surgery scheduled in 4 days, and that started this, this mad dash to get really good treatment. And so I was lucky enough to get great treatment with an amazing oncologist who did a lot of the clinical trials for the drug combination that I was really lucky to get. Because when we ended up looking at the scans, it was all throughout my body. There was tumors in my lungs. There was a tumor on my adrenal gland. They were on my bones. There was one on my rib. There was left rib, left hip, and they could see some imaging throughout my lower intestines. It was just unbelievable. It was everywhere, and I don't think anybody I think now that I talk to my friends and family about the situation, they were pretty convinced that I was going to die. I just didn't think so. And so I was proceeding I was trying to make this, I wasn't ready to die. And so I was proceeding I was going to make it. And I'm very stubborn and tenacious. And sometimes that hasn't always served me super well, but it did in this situation. And so I ended up getting amazing treatment, and I'm so grateful for that. And but once I was about a year into the treatment, and I had gone on a trip. I decided, after like sitting on my couch, which was pretty much all I could do. I was on my couch on painkillers. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. Just breathing was painful, and I really had a hard time walking, and the pain was excruciating. And so I was sitting on my couch, like looking out my window for a long time. I had a beautiful townhouse and these gorgeous vaulted ceilings, and I would look outside and I would think, like, I really want to be outside. I really want to be traveling. I don't want to be on this couch, not able to move, watching TV and like on my phone because I can't function. And so as soon as I felt kind of okay, I took a trip to Europe with my daughter. When I took that trip, I realized how sick I actually was feeling. And so it was hard. I ended up being on that trip and realizing that I was not going to be feeling that much better anytime soon. And I still wasn't sure how long I was going to be doing treatment. And so I was, it had turned, at that point, I had about 4 infusions, and I'd been in the hospital. They had changed my infusion regimen, and it started to kind of sink in that I was going to have to, obviously I was going to keep on doing these treatments, and this was going to be my life for a while. I didn't know how long. And so when I got back from Europe, I decided the place that I was living was expensive, and I had no clue how able I was going to be how able I was going to be to continue working as my business was kind of slowing down. And so I ended up having an estate sale. I packed everything up. I didn't even stay for the estate sale because I was pretty heartbroken. And I went to go see a friend in Tennessee who had bought a house out there. And I was thinking about moving out there and maybe trying to, have a small little life out there. And so I ended up doing a movie. I have a nursing corporation, and we did a lot of the COVID protocols. So we did some testing. I was in Oakland for like 8 weeks doing a movie. And when the movie wrapped, by the end of the movie, I was feeling better than I had been in a while, but I was really sick. I couldn't eat the last week. Everything that I was eating, I was throwing up, and it wasn't because I wasn't doing chemo. I did immunotherapy. So it was like, I just felt like really trash. And I, again, had this realization, like, I can't work like this. Like, I can't work in this stressful situations. My body's not going to let me. So I kind of wasn't entirely sure what I needed to do. And I knew that I didn't really want to stay in Tennessee. I had a relationship that ended very abruptly, and I will get into that in another podcast because that was a really dramatic situation and very, very tough. I had the man that I was dating kind of casually ended up passing away, and so I was like, I can't be in Tennessee anymore. I gotta go, and so I came back to LA for a hot minute, and then I just couldn't be here. It's very stressful, and it was really stressful on my body too. Like, my nervous system was just freaking out all the time. I was exhausted. I felt like trash, and I just didn't want to be here. And I've always had a love-hate relationship with Los Angeles. So I was like, peace, I'm out. And I went to Mexico. Actually, no. Before I did that, this was April of 2023. I had a friend of like 5 to 6 years, a very good friend of mine, and she and I were just catching up, and she shared with me that she had started microdosing mushrooms, and that it had made a really big difference for her to, like, she had a lot of anxiety and trauma around a variety of things, as people do, that she wasn't able to move, she wasn't able to move past it. Therapy hadn't really helped her. And she had started doing microdosing about a year prior to our conversation, which I didn't know. And she shared with me that it was like making a really big difference for her. So we kind of talked about what that was like. And I ended up being connected with the person that she had been getting her supply from, that she highly recommended and knows personally. And so I had some microdose that had come to me along with some functional mushrooms like reishi and lion's mane, and other stuff that's like really super great and supportive for cancer. So, the reason that I started dosing was because I thought, okay, I'm a nurse. Like, obviously, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I have no clue what my next steps are, but I know that, like, the way that I've been doing life in Los Angeles and, like, trying to take care of my kid, who at the time was 17, and that was really challenging. I just didn't have a clue what I was going to do. And I was really not feeling good. I was still feeling really crappy. And I was doing infusions every month. I was getting better, but like emotionally, I did not feel better. And I had gained like 25 to 30 pounds from the steroids. And that felt like crap. And I hated my hair. And I hated, I wasn't happy. And I was really exhausted, and physically I was like not doing great. My teeth had started getting loose because of the treatment. I had lost a lot of bone in my jaw. I got vitiligo, which I wasn't super thrilled about, which you can kind of see in my chest and my face, which is why it's like pigmented in my hands. And that really bothered me. And I felt like I looked old, and I felt like I felt old, and I didn't like how I was feeling. And also I was like, I'm spending so much money. What am I going to do? So I decided to go to Mexico, and I had the microdose with me. And so I went to Mexico with zero itinerary. I was like, well, I've never been to Mexico City, and everyone says it's dope, so I'm going to go. And so I got there, and I remember I was renting a car, because I love to rent a car anywhere that I go. I like to have a car to get up and go, even in places like Mexico where everybody drives like complete lunatics, which is okay because I do too. So it worked out. But so I remember I was renting the car, and the woman asked me in Spanish, like, my Spanish is better because I spent a lot of time in Mexico last year. But she asked me what I was doing there, and I told her I'm writing a book. And I had started writing a book about my experience with the cancer. And I wasn't totally sure. I was writing it kind of memoir style, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it, but I was starting to write the bones of that story. And I figured I'll go to Mexico, I'll figure out what I want to write this book about. And incidentally, I had also been very clear once I was starting to feel a little bit better, about 3 months into my treatment, when I knew that the cancer wasn't spreading actively, even though I still had stuff that was biologically active. The treatment that I did to start out was very aggressive. And so we did see that it was moving in the right direction. It wasn't all resolved, but it was better. And so at that point, I ended up really thinking about doing a podcast. So this podcast has been a year in the making. And again, like, I really actually didn't know what I was going to do it about. I had no clue, but I really wanted to just tell my story and talk to people about, getting sick and what that was like, which I'd love to get into. I will get into that like in subsequent. There's a couple things that I want to talk about just in terms of like how to talk to your friends who might have an illness or like a family member. Anyway, but because I think it's really important. But I will say also, because microdose kind of helps you to really step into your more authentic self and be able to be present in your conversations and like the way that you interact with people, it does help to like bridge the gap when we have these conversations that we want to be supportive of people that we love, but we have no clue what to say because there's nothing to say. I mean, I remember And I don't want to offend her, but like, I remember my sister-in-law loves to go to the beach. And so I had melanoma, so it's skin cancer. And I remember I was 2 months into treatment and like feeling like trash, but I was happy to see her. And she was like, we're going to go to the beach. Do you want to go? And I was like, oh, maybe. And then I was like, actually, no, I really don't think I should be out in the sun with this melanoma that's killing me. I think I'm going to skip the beach. So, stuff like that. Like people just say things that they don't realize. And she totally meant well, and I love her very much. But anyway, so sometimes, microdose has allowed me to like be very present in my conversations and be able to be compassionate and empathetic and like very present. And I think that's all that people really want. That's all that we really, that's what I needed at the time. I'll just speak for myself. First of all, having cancer really opened up my heart because I'm a doer. I'm a person who likes to do for other people and be like, I'm fine. I got it. And being so sick didn't allow me to be there was a lot that I couldn't do for myself, including just like, I didn't have the energy to push people away anymore. I didn't really realize I'd been doing that my whole life, but cancer did break a lot of boundaries down for me in terms of like just being a person, just being needing help from other people and being able to accept people's love and support and not deflect or be like, no. Or, when like somebody gives you a compliment and you're like, oh, thanks, but I actually look terrible. It's like, I just stopped doing all that. And I was more able to just be gracious. And so cancer taught me in a lot of ways how to be softer. It was the beginning of that experience. And so anyway, so I'm digressing, but I went to Mexico and this woman asked me what I was doing there. I was like, oh, I'm writing a book, which is like, I guess I was writing a book. I didn't know where that was going to go. I had started writing the first 100 pages and I felt okay about it, but in the process, so I stayed down. So first of all, I was there for 10 days. And what I did when I was there is I got an Airbnb by myself. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of walking. I did a lot of microdosing, and I did a lot of writing. And a lot of it was just kind of like a free flow of just being available to whatever thoughts came to my mind. You can call it channeling or you can call it, but it was also just like being available for like my intuition to start kicking in because I was like, I'm here, but I actually don't know what I'm doing. And so I ended up doing, a lot of meditation. And in one of my meditations, I was really clear, like, okay, I want to go, I was pretty clear that I wanted to visit some pyramids. And so I was researching where the best pyramids were, like there's a lot in Mexico. And so I was in Mexico City, there's a lot of ruins. And there's also a lot that's like off the beaten path that people don't even know about. They don't put them on a map. So you do have to go down there to discover these places. A lot of it was because there was so much looting in the 30s and 40s because it was like the locals wanted to make money and people were willing to come down and spend money on this stuff. So there's a lot that's there that people don't even know about. But so I ended up deciding that I had a couple different places that I wanted to go visit. And there were a couple things that came up in my meditations about like a serpent. And then there was like a snake. And then that I needed to go and find waters and like stuff that was not clear. And then there was a town that like, I thought I'd heard the name, but I wasn't totally sure. But no one had talked to me about it and nobody had suggested it to me, but I may have been doing a Google search, but I was like, I need to go to San Miguel de Allende. And I didn't really know why, and no one had suggested it to me. And so I remember I was doing this meditation and I was like, okay, maybe I'll go to San Miguel, maybe I'll go to Cholula, which is also like, there's this huge pyramid in Cholula. And as I'm in this meditation, it's like, a very clear message, like go to San Miguel de Allende. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go to San Miguel. That sounds good. That feels good. And then I continued doing the meditation. And then like, I've got this very loud voice in my head saying, go to San Miguel. I was like, okay, I'll go to San Miguel. No problem. I'll go. And then I start to try and get back into my meditation so I can do some more writing. And like this voice, like the noise in my head to go to San Miguel is so loud that it literally was like, no, go to San Miguel, book it right now, go. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I got onto Airbnb, I found a place, I booked it, and I was like, fine, I'll go tomorrow, no problem. And so I did. I ended up driving out there. Again, that's why I like to get a car, because it's like, if you got to get up and go, then I love to be able to just do that. And so I got in the car and I was listening to all these. I had a Carolyn Mice, like an audio. I was listening to Audible, and she's like a medical intuit and was talking about like the tree of life and the chakra system and how they kind of correlate. That's stuff that definitely interests me as a medical practitioner. I actually, when I was going through nursing school, I ended up going to Sedona at the same time, like right in my third semester of nursing school, and learning how to do past life regression hypnotherapy. And I've always been interested in taking elements of holistic medicine, but it's not actually, when I really think about it, it's not holistic medicine, because that's more like nutrition or herbal, like maybe Eastern philosophy. What I really was interested in was like really taking elements of spirituality and combining them with what I was learning as a nurse, which is just the basics of anatomy and the basics of how medicine works and how the body works. And so I had a high level of interest in doing that. I had gotten interested in past life regression right before I went into nursing school. I had a woman that I was working with who was like, did energy work. She would do some past life regression. But I had found a book when I was with my daughter. We were at the library, and I found a book about past life regression hypnotherapy. And I was going through some stuff at the time, like emotionally. I had a recent breakup, and I was just kind of struggling. And so I found this book. I love metaphysical books. I always have. And so I found this book, and I learned how to do past life regression on myself, which is basically taking yourself on a journey. And it's done it's like what people do when there's a lot of ways that when people use psychedelics, they will do journeys like this. There's ways to get into these states. And around that same time, I had also been doing meditation around the business that I had at that time. And I had learned how to do like a Merkaba meditation. And I learned how to do, and like I had a meditation that I did where the word theta came into my mind, which I didn't know anything about. And I ended up looking it up. And by the way, this is like 2010. So the internet wasn't that old. I mean, I know that that's like, obviously we had the internet, but it was like, there wasn't as much information on the internet about as there is now. So it was good that I could actually find information on theta waves. And so I would play theta waves, and then I would do meditation around my business and like the money that I wanted to make, because I was a single mom, like running a business. And I ran that business for like 7-8 years while I was going to nursing school, and then after, because it was doing well. And I didn't use my nursing license right away. And so I learned how to do these meditations around money, and it was really amazing. And I ended up being able to meditate on specific amounts of money, and it would happen for me. And I remember I would use a little ledger and track exactly how much money I would make. And I was making 6 figures. And this was, like I said, 2010, running my own business, being as a sole proprietor. So it was working for me. So I really had kind of invested in a lot of spirituality. And I'd always been spiritual. I grew up Mormon, which is like, and I left when I was 17 because I just knew it wasn't for me. And, but I do think that it gave me like a very interesting kind of a religious education. I'm not a religious person, but I find it like it's still something that like I can put context to spiritual things in a way that people without the spiritual education, without the religious education, can't. I mean, we probably studied scriptures every day, and I know in high school we did. We would go and do like an hour before we go to school, which I hated, but we did it. So I have all that knowledge in my head, and which is just an interesting aside. But anyway, so I was in Mexico, and I ended up going down to San Miguel, and I had booked a session to do a cacao ceremony. I know, sounds, and this is like, I had not done any other, I'd never done psychedelics. I'd never had a journey. I'd never worked with a shaman. And I found this shaman on Airbnb. She was advertising that she did ceremonies, and she was phenomenal. And so I literally, I didn't even unpack. I just put my bag, checked into the little yoga ashram that I was staying at. There was a couple rooms, super cute place. Lovely place, and there was a dog there too, which I really liked. And so I ended up checking in, and I didn't even unpack. I immediately went and did the ceremony. Cacao is not psychedelic. Like, it was just a heart opening ceremony using the coca bean, and it's meant to be a heart opener. And I will tell you that through a lot of very, very sadly toxic and abusive relationships, and some abuse when I was a very difficult relationship with my mother, I had really, my heart had to be closed, and it wasn't open, and so I really needed that. And so I ended up doing the ceremony, and then we booked, I think, another one maybe that day, and I spent 5 days in San Miguel, and I ended up doing a temazcal ceremony with her as well, which is like a lightly psychedelic. She had her own blend of things that she did, but really it was like the kind of like opened the door to this. She was a very authentic shaman, and it wasn't super commercial. She just was working out of her house in like a little townhouse kind of on the outskirts of the city. And I just connected with her deeply. And she's very tiny, pixie-ish woman. I have no idea how old she is, but she's got a son in her 20s. She doesn't look that old, but she's got a son in his 20s. So I'm assuming she's like probably around, my age, in her 40s or maybe early 50s. But she looks like she could be about 30 also. But she's wonderful, magical person. So I ended up telling my family, I was like, we got to come back. I love it here. So I ended up spending all of July there and writing. And in the middle of writing there, when I was in, I realized that I didn't actually know what the ending to my story was. And I was like, oh, okay. I have this story that I'm writing about this journey of getting so sick and getting through it somehow, some way. And I realized that I didn't know how it ended, and that I was very hesitant to write the ending because where I was at wasn't enough, and that I had work to do. And so that actually set me on, I thought I was ending my story, and it was just the beginning. It was absolutely just the beginning. So this is the point, is that I want to take you guys on that journey and kind of let things unfold. There are people that I met along the way who have been spiritual friends and advisors and companions to me. And I'm going to bring them into some subsequent podcasts, and I'm so excited for it. I'm also going to talk about the tools that I used to start to, because even when I was I was still probably about 25 pounds heavier than I am now, which I was really unhappy with. It's I was grateful to be alive, but I'm still a human, and I'm a girl. So I was I don't want to, I wanted to be pretty again. I wanted to feel that I looked pretty again. And so that was a thing. I didn't feel, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't feel like I I didn't even know what I was looking at, to be like, I had no context for this new person that I was dealing with. And I do think that going through a huge trauma, like this cancer that was so bad, it really changed everything about how I was perceiving things. Like there would be days that I would just walk around like, I don't even know what planet I'm on. That's how I felt. And I talk to people about this all the time. And when you have kind of like an existential crisis, whether it's a loved one dying or a divorce or a job change, when like your whole life has been wrapped up in who you are, as your career is like your entire life, or you have a pet die, it can be absolutely life-changing. And the way that we handle those changes absolutely will create this whole dynamic that is like, it can either set you onto a path of healing or it can keep you stuck, because those things are very traumatic. You can choose to like let it go and let the death of whatever it is that you're letting go of. It's like, I didn't even know who I was anymore. I had no context for this new person who was very emotional and very soft and fragile and scared. I'd always been like a total go-getter and kind of obtuse, really. And I would just go after things a million miles a minute, and I wouldn't take care of I didn't sleep a lot. I was one of those people who I could work like 20 hours a day, and that was kind of okay for me. But I didn't know how to just like be in my own skin. And so I want to talk about with everybody the tools that I learned. Like I learned how to identify trauma in my body, how to unlock that, how to feel it, how to do those things in a way that felt okay to me. I started shedding the weight. I started really loving who I was and intentionally embracing this new version of myself. And some days were hard, and I mended a very, difficult relationship with my mother. I mended, and I'm still working on a relationship with my daughter, which is so much better. And I'm planning to bring her in. I hope she says yes. So let's see. And I also have been single for the first time in my adult life. I have been totally single, and that has been truly wonderful. And that's been a new experience. I got to travel a bunch. I want to talk about, like I said, the people that I've met who have really moved the dial for me. Some of them I met over the last 10 and 15 years. I'll bring some of them in, and I'm excited to share all this stuff with you guys, because of course it's about the microdose. It really softened me and opened my heart and like gave me my intuition back, and I trust it immensely. It's my superpower. You can have it too. And whatever you're going through, like there is a way to move through it. There are tools that I use that are so effective, and I just want to share that with people. And so I'm super excited to do all that. And I would